We're here, The Gift, The Gab,
Mm-hmm.
episode 13. 13 episodes in. Want to give a big shout out to Kashan Persian Rugs, Alberta's go-to area rug supplier.
Mm-hmm.
Got a big sale going on. Everything in the store is 40% off. Winter's here. Get your carpets, get situated. And,
I'm getting my rug this week, you know. I know I've been saying that for a while, but like, now's the time. Now's the time.
Now's the time. We have a special episode here for you guys today. We got a very special guest, Tracy from Consult the Sky.
Hello.
Hello.
It's good to finally meet you.
You as well.
In person. Thank you.
Speak into the mic, guys.
Speak into the mic. Sorry.
Speak into the mic.
Okay.
I know.
I'll try not to look at you when I talk.
You can look.
I warned him ahead of time. I'm a mover, so this is going to be really tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Tracy is an astrologist.
Astrologer. First misconception off the list. Astrologist is not a thing. Although Facebook thinks it is, it's the only option it gives us to as job. If you want to put that in there, it's astrologist. It's wrong.
It's wrong?
Mm.
Yep.
Look at that. I'm already learning.
Yeah,
So it hasn't even
something every
started.
day.
That's crazy.
Wow.
So, astrologer.
Yep.
Not psychic.
No.
So, people cannot come to you and say, hey, can you tell me what's going to happen to me next Wednesday?
No. There are ways you could ask that question that I could give you information about next Wednesday. But it's not like that. So say you wanted to come to me and said, I want to buy a car next Wednesday. Well, without knowing anything about you, I'd say you don't buy a car during Mercury retrograde. Because Mercury rules cars. And so if anybody I know who's bought a lemon, bought it during Mercury retrograde. So
just for
I can tell you that.
Just for the listeners and the viewers that are in this, me personally, I didn't really understand what Mercury retrograde means. Could you provide a little insight on that?
I sure can. So from our vantage point, all the planets, we all move around the sun. So based on the way they move from our vantage point, it looks like Mercury is going backwards. It's not. It's just that in its orbit, it slows down. And we keep going at the rate that we're going, and so it just looks like it moves back and then goes forward again.
Okay.
And all of the planets do that.
Okay.
But Mercury does it 4 times a year.
So is there anything that you'd recommend or you wouldn't do or would do during this time of year?
Well, there's definitely things I would do. I mean, anytime Mercury goes retrograde, it's a great time to redo things that need to be redone, reorganize. Anything with a re in front of it. Closer.
Maybe a little even higher.
But then you can't see me.
You should put audio engineer in your bio next time too. Oh my goodness.
I just want people to be able to hear this information.
Okay, so anything that has a re in front of it, so redo, revisit, revise, are great things to do during Mercury retrograde. Revisit a relationship. Remove a relationship. Yeah, I mean, it's a great time if there's problems in a relationship. It's a good time to communicate about those problems. And then you look at what sign it's in. So it's in Scorpio right now, so it's definitely about digging deeper in terms of communication because Mercury rules communication.
So, I think for the casual people who follow astrology, they might go off, the global male's horoscope or stuff like that.
Okay.
How does one go and find out, if one was born in Mercury retrograde or...
So you could go to a site called astro.com and put in your information and it will give you your chart and it'll tell you there's a little RX by Mercury that it was retrograde.
Mm.
Do other planets go into retrograde?
All of them, except for the sun and the moon. Because the moon goes around Earth, right? It doesn't ever look like it's moving backwards. And the sun, it is determining the movement because we're all rotating around it. So all the other ones go retrograde.
So when people, not a misconception, but this is very common when you first meet somebody and you tell them your birthday, like, oh, you're an Aries, and they feel like they might already have you figured out.
But see, this is my thing. Like, how many signs are there in the horoscope? Like, how big is it? How many signs are there?
There are 12 signs.
There are 12 signs. So
Yep.
you're just saying off the rip, you meet someone right away. You know exactly the key personality traits of how they're going to act.
No.
And you're going to determine, you stay away from me right now. Like, what? Like, to me, that never made any sense. And that's a question I had. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, so when somebody says, when's your birthday? And they go, oh, you're an Aries. All that is that the sun was in the sign of Aries when you were born. So that's just your sun. So there are the 7 closest planets, which are a big part of our personality. They create our personalities. And then there's the outer planets, which determine which generations we're born in. Am I close enough to the mic?
You're giving off that say.
And so, how strong? I mean, some people don't really relate to their sun sign as much as they would to something else in their chart. And so that just depends on where it is in the chart, which is why time is important, because that determines where everything is in the chart. It's the horizon, and therefore where all the planets are based on the horizon. That's a really simplified explanation, but that's what you're going to get right now.
Hold that thought. I want my chart.
A few moments later.
Holy smokes.
Okay, so what you have is your chart, and then that's like a legend of what the symbols are.
Yeah.
And then this is just a little excerpt from one of my favorite astrology books that describes the combination of your sun and your moon.
I'm a fire water.
You've got a Scorpio moon.
I was wondering, because I thought it was an Aries.
You are an Aries sun.
Aries sun, but Scorpio moon.
Yeah.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So, me and Andre are both Aries.
Yep.
How does the moon change our personalities? Like, because we're sun signs, right?
But we have differences, though. You know what I'm saying? A
lot.
lot of differences, although we are Aries. So.
Mm-hmm. So, this is also not an easy answer. I'm going to start at the moon. The moon is the first thing we learn. So if you think about the chart is the moment in time you're born, okay? And then it just keeps moving. So we evolve and we change. And then as the things are moving in the sky and contacting the stuff at the place where we're born, we're learning about ourselves. So the moon, because it moves around in 28 days or so, we're learning the moon first. It's our instincts. It is our reaction usually if we're not feeling safe. It represents the mother. It represents food. Anything to do with how we nourish ourselves is all based in the moon. So I actually think the moon is far more important to get to know in somebody than the sun. Because the sun is, when you talk about people feeling like they're, I'm a such and such, I'm a Pisces, but I don't think I relate to that. Well, it's because our sun is actually what we're trying to get to. It's not necessarily who we are, right? And so there are parts of that we'll own, but we're trying to evolve to the best part of what that sun sign is.
I see.
Does that make sense?
In a sense, your sun sign is what you're trying to become.
It's what your aspiration.
It's what you're hoping. It's what you're trying to evolve to
Yeah.
at its highest sense, right? Because each sign has sort of a negative manifestation and a positive manifestation, right? So the darker side of, let's use Leo because everybody likes to use Leo, and let's face it, Leo likes to hear about itself. So I love all my Leos. It wasn't a diss, it's just true. So, the positive manifestation of Leo is that it's generous and kind. And I mean, you look at the cast of Friends, which is dating me, but like more than half of them were Leos. And the fact that they could work collaboratively speaks volumes, because a Leo, if it's going to make them look good, is going to share the stage. It's going to be generous. It's going to be creative.
See.
But a Leo that's negatively manifesting is going to be me, look at me,
Very self-observed, very.
Well, and just really needing that attention to
I
fulfill something that's missing, right? Whereas you meet really strong, confident Leos who don't need to do that because they just sort of command that attention with their presence.
Mhm.
So, yes, if they feel like I went off on a tangent.
I feel like my whole understanding of
Horoscopes.
astrology has been
Excellent.
Flipped upside
That's
down.
excellent.
Flipped upside down.
That's so good.
So what you're, just to clarify, what you're basically saying is if I talk to a girl, you know, I ask her, oh, what's your sign? She says, oh, Pisces. It's not fair for me to judge off the rip how she is as a person and if we're going to be compatible.
No.
Bitch,
No,
you don't
sun
know.
sign.
You don't know. Stop this, man. Like, honestly, because I always have the dumbest excuses. Like, oh, sorry, man. Like, I don't know if this is going to work or we can work. I'm like, me personally, I wasn't a big horoscope believer. And I didn't really think, oh, if you're Aries, I'm an Aries, you're going to butt heads or whatever. But what you're saying now with the importance of the moon and how that, and how the importance of the moon and the sun, how people aspire to be the sun, like that kind of changes things a lot from a sense. So it's interesting.
So compatibility, because that's what everybody always wants to know about, generally rests in what the moon is doing, like my moon to your chart, Venus and Mars, Saturn, if it's a long-term relationship. So the sun is like so,
It's like,
and often people who are in long-term relationships actually have incompatible suns because they're learning to become that sun. Like there's a learning involved when you have an awkward. So when I say awkward relationship between planets, it's all based on a 360-degree circle, right? And so what angle are those planets making to each other? And then that determines the relationship they're having with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So an opposition or a square is a difficult aspect. And so they will create learning between people or in a personality. If that square is actually in your own chart, you'll be learning about yourself. For you, it's your sun and your moon. So you're always sort of learning about who you are and how you feel and how that works together.
Mm-hmm.
So yours is quincunx, which is another very difficult aspect, but not a good one for relationships.
oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Before we get into more about us, I wanted to ask, you said something about the moons and generations. How they...
The outer planets, are generational.
How, can you explain that a little bit?
So because they take a really long time to get around the sun. So if we're looking at Uranus takes 85 years, 84 years approximately. Neptune is longer than that, and Pluto is even longer. And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but what will happen is because they take so long to get around, and they'll take years to get through a sign, right? So you've got Pluto in Leo, which is the baby boomers, and then Pluto in Virgo, which is Gen X. And this is an approximation because it doesn't cut off super cleanly at each end, but each one of those Pluto cycles pretty much defines each generation that we define with things like millennial, Gen X, Gen Z, that kind of thing.
So some person didn't just come up with these, slots for our generations, like millennials.
Yeah.
Well, they did. I mean, somebody gave them a name, probably a sociologist.
Mm-hmm.
But they can be defined by the planets. And their characteristics are very obvious when you look at. So you think of baby boomers.
Mm-hmm.
Very traditional.
Okay. What other words do you think of without making people really mad?
Baby boomers, I think of traditional, by the books, very, what do you think, Alex? I don't know.
Conventional?
It's a long,
I don't know.
conventional.
Conservative?
I was going to say conservative. Very, yeah, I mean.
Okay, so I'm going to use the word I use, which this is not meant to offend anybody, and to tie in, you guys are talking the politics, I think, when you start using the words.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, if you look at it in terms of the personality trait or the sort of the personality of that group, is that there's a selfishness and an entitlement.
Ooh. Okay.
And it's not on an individual level. It is on, because I have lots of wonderful humans I know who were born in that generation, but for some reason collectively there's something that is created, and so those words, the words I use, create the outcome that you guys are talking about, and it's Pluto and Leo.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's Pluto and Leo. So what would millennials be? I
Um,
won't offend anybody.
Okay, so what are we defining millennials as? What's that age group?
Say from like,
That's older than you guys, right?
it's from, I think the cutoff is like 20, or no, I think it was like 30.
What is it in astrology?
Well, because I think it's Pluto and Libra.
Pluto
And so, because this is, we were talking about FOMO. My husband and I were talking about FOMO, and I had said, "Oh, that's a very Libra thing."
Of you, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, "Oh, I was just reading an article that's the millennials trademarked that," and I said, "Oh, I wonder what they have in Libra," and I looked, and it's Pluto and Libra. So, it's very much they want to be involved in everything,
Yeah.
right? Which is very Pluto and Libra, and that's the millennial group.
And millennials are what age group?
My guess, I'd say from like 30 to 18. I don't know if I'm wrong. Because then what's after millennial? Isn't there,
No,
like,
so then when you're talking that age group, 30 to 18, that is now two different groups because you guys don't actually have the same Pluto sign. Yours is in Scorpio and yours is in Sagittarius. So you're in late Scorpio, so by the time you came along, it had changed signs. So Pluto and Scorpio is all about the truth. They want to get to the bottom of everything. They want to unearth the bullshit. Very much so.
Like aliens. But
Yes.
That's another.
So it's more like, and it's interesting when you think about
man. Sorry,
Sorry.
keep going. Yeah, sorry. Keep
Did you
going.
just say aliens?
Yeah, like I had to address that. Man. Come on, bro. Really, man?
The truth.
Come
They all
on,
get to the
bro.
truth.
And it's more about unearthing secrets
Mm-hmm.
for Pluto and Scorpio. Whereas the truth, in terms of the ideology, is Pluto and Sagittarius. So it's like the Pluto and Scorpios get to come in and dig up all the bullshit. And then the Pluto and Sages will preach.
Yeah, preach,
Sag likes to
goodness,
preach. Yeah.
Andre's a preacher, all right.
Oh man, what is that? What are you trying to say?
How has astrology been used, outside of just what we see like horoscopes, like up until now?
So what we're talking about right now is under the umbrella of natal astrology. So looking at a birth chart and then looking at how those things work together. But I wrote a little bit of a history down because I can never remember any of these details. But like the first astrological thing they found was like 4,000 years ago, Mesopotamia, and it was omen tablets. So at that, they followed the moon very closely. Of course, they followed the things they could see, right? And so it was all about kind of predicting what kind of omens, especially eclipses. Eclipses were very scary. And so then it worked into their, of course, their politics. And most of the rulers would have had an astrologer, I guess. I'm still not the right person for you to be talking history about this. There's smarter people than me, for sure. I have the worstest memories, so there's that. But they found the earliest recorded birth chart in like 410 BCE.
410
Jesus,
GC.
Yeah.
goodness gracious.
Yeah. So there's also, they found evidence of diagnostic stuff from like before Christ that they used for medicine. And there's still a branch of medical astrology today. But it was in the 12th century that it was in universities. So there was like a chair of astrology, and they were part of the medical and just the social sciences, essentially, if they even had that at that point. So, yeah. But in terms of what we've done with it now is that, you've got psychological astrology, actually. Mundane is political. So looking at like the charts of countries.
Okay.
And looking at the history that way, and then what's going to happen through that. There's electional astrology is when you want to pick a good date for something. So or election, wedding, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing, there's electional astrology where you want to pick a date. horror astrology. So when you were saying what's going to happen on Wednesday, that's why I kind of stopped and thought about it. There is a branch of astrology where you can say, am I going to get this job? And for the moment that I understand the question, I can pull up a chart and give you an answer that gives you a lot more details than just flipping over a tarot card. But it can kind of tell you what might get in the way, what might be in your favor,
Excuse me.
Things like that.
I had a question in regards to what we're kind of on the line of what we're talking about. So, is astrology the end all be all? Like, if you're fall within a certain category, does that define who you are, and as humans should we accept that, or do we have the option to kind of work through that and change, develop? Because I feel like there's this attitude sometimes of like, someone does something, it's like, oh, I'm a Leo, I can't help it. Like, just let me
There's
live.
lots
So-
of people who use it as an excuse.
and
For
I'm like,
sure.
listen, what do you like? Stop this. I look at these guys like they're idiots. I'm like, no, honestly, like, what do you? I'm a Leo, you can't help it, so that's why you treat other people like this, or you view a certain situation like that. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm just coming for Leos.
Well, I mean, it's just the same if you use anything in your life as an excuse for bad behavior. It's bullshit. It doesn't. Astrology, poor childhood, whatever your silly excuse is. I was drinking. None of those are good excuses.
Try to justify it that way.
Yeah, for sure. It's a convenient excuse.
Oh yeah.
Is there some things that have recently happened, like in recent events, that can be explained by astrology?
Are you talking about Uranus and what we talked about Hitler?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had taken a look. Uranus beginning of last year, started moving back and forth, talking about retrogrades. It swung back and forth into Aries and back into Taurus and into Aries and back into Taurus until it finally landed there permanently in Taurus. Not permanently, but for the next however long it's going to be there. In February. But when it first started swinging in, I noticed that the last time it had done that was when Hitler came into power. And so sort of my prediction at the time was that that's sort of the energy we would be looking at with that same placement. So can't say it didn't happen.
Could you dumb that down a little
Just a little, bit.
A little bit. So Uranus.
Yeah.
The last time it was swinging between Aries and Taurus.
Yeah.
Hitler was in power.
Yeah.
And that's happening right now.
Yeah, and so it's back there. So it takes 84 years to get around.
84 years. So
Yeah.
every 84 years, we can kind of expect a figure.
Some kind of something like this.
Like Donald
There's
Trump?
there's a lot more.
Wow, that's
I just call him the Oompa Loompa.
wow, bro.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's okay, bro.
He didn't say it.
Oh man.
So there's lots of other things happening right now that are quite a big deal astrologically in terms of revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have Saturn, which is our structures, and our government rules. Saturn rules government, and anything like that, institutions, anything that's solid is Saturn.
This astrology shit is amazing.
It's a lot. So
Telling us.
Yeah.
I have a few friends who are like completely against this. Like you bring up astrology, they look at me like, move from me, get away from me. So, what are some tips or suggestions you would make to kind of ease people that are very against astrology altogether? Like what path would you suggest
Why
they take
are
to
they-
maybe-
why
Yeah, I
are
was gonna say
people
when you
like-
say against, what do you mean?
Like you bring up, oh, I'm a Leo, I do this and that. I'm like, they'll be like, oh, that's BS. Or sometimes on Twitter or Instagram, you'll see like they have the daily horoscopes, which will determine how your day is gonna go. And some people believe that. Some people are like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do this at 12. This is gonna happen at 2. I feel this way at 5. Like, so my friends are kind of like, I have a couple friends that are kind of against that. So, in what sense would you say, oh, maybe they should take this path to become more familiar with astrology altogether?
Well, I mean, it's sort of, I'll say the same thing that I say to people that say I don't believe in it. I would say, well, that's okay, it's going to happen to you anyways. Whatever. have fun not knowing what's coming. So there's, it's like, it's not really about believing or accepting. It's just whether it's part of your consciousness or not, and it's not necessary. I mean, we still have intuition. We still have all these things that guide us. And you're going to be on your path. It's just whether you kind of like to know what kind of obstacles,
You're gonna
or what
encounter.
kind of help you're going to get, and which times are going to be easier and which times are going to be more challenging.
It's kind of like a guide to prepare yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
That I don't think a lot of people may want at times.
And that's absolutely fair.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I've met people who are the other way, where it's like they do everything based on, and it can be really, really neurotic making
Yeah.
to try to figure out exactly when the best time. Oh my
To do
God.
this and that.
Yeah. Oh good, I
Yeah.
flushed the toilet. It's over. You know,
I've
like
seen-
it can be really bad.
I seen something a few years back where it's like someone was saying you shouldn't eat like meat during this time of the year because it's gonna digest slower, or I don't know if that rings any bells, but I seen it. I'm like, oh, they posted something on Instagram. They're like, yeah, we can't eat any type of meat or pork, because it's not gonna digest properly and it'll lead to other things. And I'm like, huh. Those are the type of things where I'm like, it kind of separates me from all that.
Birth of the internet is not always good, right? Like anybody can say they're an astrologer. There's no, especially in North America, there's no guiding, certification that you can get that's universal, that sort of says you're an expert. And there's lots of people that read a book and figure they know. I think I was one of those people when I started out that, well, I know what all the planets are, I know what they're supposed to do. And I remember going to my first conference and coming home and my husband said, "What'd you learn?" I'm like, "One thing." He's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "I don't know anything." Like I walked away feeling like, holy crap, I know nothing. So
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
That's a big state. Yeah, that's a big
well,
step.
it definitely pushed me to learn a lot more. But I think that where I was at before that conference is where a lot of those things come from.
Yeah.
Those people who
Those
read one
presumptions.
book and think they know what they're talking about.
Might need to read like 10.
If that.
See how it goes.
If that.
How's
How's that quote go? Wise man knows that he knows nothing at all. So
It's true.
it's yeah.
Somebody just put up a meme recently, the 3 stages of astrology. You know a little bit, you know it all, you know nothing.
There's no in between in those.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing after the you know nothing.
Yeah. Oh man.
What is we went into the historical significance. What is the cultural significance of astrology? Like, I think people only see it in the newspapers.
Mm.
But you were saying to me that it's almost everywhere and we don't even realize it.
Yeah, like even just the days of the week are named after the planets or the gods that rule the planet. You know, the mythology that's paired with the planet, right? So if you know Norse gods, which I don't, then you know the days of the week. But if you know French, then, or, you know, Monday's obviously Moon Day. Tuesday is Mardi, so Mars Day. Yeah. And then Mercredi,
Mercury.
Jeudi is Jupiter.
Jupiter. Wow.
Vendredi.
Venus? Oh, mind blown.
Samedi.
Was that Saturday?
Saturn or
Sunday.
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 Sunday, yeah.
I don't even
That's
need-
self-explanatory,
yeah, that's
yeah.
pretty easy. Yeah. So yeah,
Huh.
just even that straightforward. It's all over the place.
And we don't
That's
even
good.
know it. That's wow.
Yeah. There's
Very
probably a lot
interesting.
more that I can't think of right now
That
is very present in our everyday life. That, I mean, even language like lunacy, they used to blame everything on the moon, right?
Oh, shit.
There's lots of words that if you sit and you think about the language, it's based on a planetary connection.
What are your thoughts on daily horoscopes? The ones that pop up on your Twitter and Facebook from time to time, and
The ones in the Globe and Mail?
ones in the Global Mail that come and say, "Hey,
Well, okay, I'll stop you
okay,
because I write horoscopes
okay,
for the Llewellyn astrological calendar. So as you said, there's 12 signs. It's really hard to be connecting to all of the people, right? But I'm going to show you on a chart. You guys can see. It's a circle for those of you who can't see. So what we do is you put the sign here and then figure out where the planets are based on that sign on the ascendant. And then you say, okay, you're going to have a good or a bad day based on that, right? Because these divisions are areas of life. So if I use this technique and I'm talking about Cancer on this day, I'm going to say, oh, you're probably going to butt up against some people who are trying to piss you off because that's Mars. That would be square it.
Yeah.
Right? But, I mean, this is based on the minute you're born. This
precise.
degree changes approximately every 4 minutes, which is why a precise birth time is so important, to be able to tell you what areas of your life are being affected by things, okay? And that's how they write sun sign astrology. So some really great astrologers that I know now write rising sign astrology. So on Alex's chart, we know he has Scorpio rising. So you would read the Scorpio horoscope, and it would probably fall more accurately into what on your daily life and which parts of your world are going to be affected that day.
So I'm an Aries, but I should be
But you have
reading
a
my
Scorpio ascendant, yeah.
This is crazy.
So if you know your time of birth and you get your chart and you want to read your horoscope every day, you need to find out what your rising sign is or what your ascendant sign is.
Ascendant.
So what is that compared to your moon sign? Are those the same thing?
No.
What are the
Okay,
differences?
so imagine the moment you're born, you take a 3D picture of the sky
Yeah.
and sort of the fake constellations, because we don't go by the actual constellations because they're not 30 degrees apart, right? And you place that chart, place the horizon as to where the sun would be, right? And then where all the planets are in terms of that. Okay? So where's the moon at the moment you're born? So those
Okay.
that picture has nothing to do with where the planets are in terms of connecting. The moon is your ascendant. No, the planets are the planets,
Okay.
and the chart is the chart.
So this is more, like you said, it's more time specific, more time based.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a measurement of time. Yep,
Time is more important than.
and place, because it's of course from it. Just imagine you pop out into the earth on a spot. Well, if the spot is in Australia, it's not going to be the same than if it's in Toronto, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's a
Yeah.
good point. Yeah.
Damn. So many layers to this.
So much.
So many layers. So in a very simple definition that we use when we're first teaching astrology is that you imagine that the circle, the houses, are the stage of your life. Okay?
Mm.
The stage you're born onto. The planets are the actors and the signs are the costumes they're wearing. Whoa. Silence.
I'm trying to process it.
I know, it's a
yeah,
lot.
it's a lot, yeah.
And so each actor has a role, right? And they're going to act a certain way based on whatever they've been dressed up in. And then they're going to have more significance in the place on the stage they've been put on.
Damn.
I know.
So this
We
whole
just thought it was a horoscope, and it's just not.
everything all the conceptions we have about horoscopes are totally wrong in a sense.
Well, they're certainly not the end. You know, like they're just really the tiniest little beginning. Tiny, tiny, tiny piece of astrology.
Like you told me I gotta read the Scorpio horoscope. I should read the Scorpio.
Yes,
horoscope.
it would say if it's a horoscope written in terms of what's on the horizon, then for you it would be Scorpio. It would talk more about what's going on in your life.
For me, it would be.
I don't know what time you're born.
Oh,
I know, I'm telling you got to get that
How do you
information.
not know what time you're born?
bro, I gotta ask my mom. I gotta do this. It's too much. It's too much information. Like, come on, bro.
They never just told you?
You remember the exact time? Like,
My dad always reminds me.
why? Like, what?
It's like 9:20 at East General Hospital.
That's awesome.
He's like, I was
love
watching the
that.
Jays.
Say the word.
You know?
I was
Yeah.
watching the
That's
Nice.
jokes.
Nice.
That's crazy because we think we understand things, right? And then you get an expert in the room, and all of a
It's
sudden,
like,
you don't
oh
know
man,
shit.
you don't. Everything just goes out the window. And like, okay, we're learning these new things. I didn't know that I'm not supposed to look at the Aries chart. So this whole time, I
What
keep
the
going
fuck was
But you
that?
could have Aries rising. We don't know.
Oh
You
yeah,
could.
because it's a process, right?
Well,
I'm
but
trying to
what time are you
inspire that.
born? If you're born with the Aries
Okay.
on the horizon, then you could be needing to look at Aries.
What can you tell us about Andre, so that girls can watch this and
That's
get to know
crazy.
who he is?
Well, I'm looking at Andre's chart right now. I didn't even know it was sitting there.
Was it
I don't want to out you.
No,
Like,
you can out me. This is an
Can
intimate
I?
podcast right now.
Yeah.
You can out me. Yep.
So, I'll tell you the things that I loved about your chart. Is that you have a signature in your chart where as long as you put in the work, you will always reap the rewards. That the abundance planet is very tightly associated to the hard work planet, so I'm talking about Saturn and Jupiter. They're in each other's signs. And so Saturn always wants to reward our hard work, but then Jupiter will make sure it's rewarded. So that's a very nice signature to have in your chart. The difficult part of that is that you'll get bitten in the ass every time you try to cut a corner.
So gotta play it fair.
Yeah.
No cutting corners.
Gotta do all the work.
I'm a man of integrity, so.
Well, I'm gonna say you're a man of authenticity. I don't know that I would say
You would say
integrity
integrity?
because I think that you're a bit of a player.
Wow. Wow.
I think you're pretty good at knowing exactly how to get what you want.
I won't play it. Damn. So I'm very manipulative.
Just
No,
got
I
hot-
didn't.
just
I
got
did not.
hot in
I
here.
love. See, this is.
I was gonna wear my puffer too, and I'm already boiling, bro. Holy
Man,
smokes!
Andre can
I did
I'm
not
a
say that you're
player.
very manipulative.
Damn.
I didn't say that.
So what's a player? Like what to you? What's a player? I don't know what a player. Like I know what a player is, but I feel like
A basketball
everyone's their
player?
own.
Well, he is. I mean, he's definitely got an athlete signature for sure. I mean, so here's the interesting thing that I wanted to say when it was just you and I. I'm like, no, I'm going to save it for the podcast. So it's always interesting to look at what connects people, right? So in this sense, like, okay, so what's connecting the two of you and how do I fit into that? Well, we're all Mars ruled, which is fascinating. Which is the athletic thing that you pointed out. Because I used to compete in dance in this building.
Wow.
But I've never hung out in the basement. Anyways, and so having an extremely Martian chart, you have the most Martian chart of the three of us, because it rules your whole chart. So that's where and it rules your moon too, because your moon is in Scorpio. So that's where the authenticity comes in.
Okay.
Okay, because Mars is very much about the truth, especially when the moon is in Scorpio, right? But Venus is the planet of our values. Of our
Keep
values.
going. I'm waiting right
I'm sure
now.
you heard what I'm saying of our values. And you have it in Gemini. And Gemini, well, let's just say Gemini.
He has it in Gemini?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does whatever it needs to get what it wants. Gemini plays for both teams. It's genderless. Mercury itself is genderless. It swings whatever way it needs to. And so to have a Venus in Gemini just means that you will adjust to get what you want.
Okay. So.
I wouldn't say manipulate, although I think that's a potential.
Okay. Potential.
I think it's a potential. And you need to be aware of your powers of persuasion. Use your powers for good.
I'm an authentic guy,
Mm-hmm.
but
But you're driven by Mars.
I'm driven
Who wants
by-
to get whatever the hell it wants?
I see what you're saying. But don't we all want what we want?
Some people don't know what they want. That's
True,
That's
true.
honest to God truth.
That is true.
That's facts.
That is facts.
Yeah.
That's facts.
I see girls in relationships for 5 years that don't even know why they're in relationships for 5 years.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, there's people who will never know what they want to be when they grow up.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not how they're made.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's generally a Mars problem. And so when you have a strong Mars, you know what you want.
Mm.
And it's like when it's this strong, it's kind of like a torpedo. It just sort of goes in the direction it needs to go in to get what it wants.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Whereas you,
Oh, I was waiting for this.
Oof.
so you have Mars ruling your moon. I have Mars ruling my moon. So my moon sits on both of your suns, which is kind of interesting. And you have Mars conjunct your moon, meaning they're close to the same degree in Cancer. But see, the moon rules your Mars. So you're way more, you want to make sure everybody gets taken care of. You're especially you, you need to feel safe,
Oh,
and then you're
100%.
going to take care of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very, very family oriented man.
Yes.
Yeah.
He loves his mom.
Loves his mom.
Loves his mom.
Pops.
A lot.
Broski.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah, very family oriented, very connected to your roots. For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he says he's half Persian every other episode, so I'd say that too as well.
You know
Well, and
myself.
so it's interesting because Persia is a huge key to the astrological history, because when it got buried in one part of the world, when the Christians took over and ruined everything, Persia, everything got taken into Persia, and they grew astrology,
Mm-hmm.
and then it got brought back. And so there's this huge Persian influence right in the heart of astrology.
Really?
So it's cool that you're interested in it, because it's definitely part of your bloodline.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You hear that, my fellow Persians? Know your signs. Your sun sign, your moon sign,
Know yourself and know your sign.
your ascending sign. Ascending sign? Is that right?
That's it.
Ascending, descending.
Ascending, descending. I'm mind blown. I'm learning a whole bunch of shit today. And I'm learning a lot about Andre.
You learn something new every day, man.
Oh yeah.
You know.
So like, when people talk about compatibility,
Okay.
okay, what, like, does this like fit into like soulmates? How does astrology fit in that?
Okay. So there are 2 points on either side of the moon that have to do with its relationship to Earth. When the sun and the moon are close to it, they're called the nodes, the lunar nodes.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the points that when the sun and moon get close to them during a full moon and a new moon, we get an eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a very spiritual, historical relevance.
Mm-hmm.
And if you study the nodes, there's always a fatalistic definition that comes with them. And often when you see or meet people who feel like they're with a soulmate, I don't like to use that word because not everybody buys into that, and so it's a label
I'm
that
one of those guys, yeah.
yeah. So when you meet people who have those types of connections, and not just with like a love relationship, but just people that they feel really soul connected to in an inexplicable way.
Could be work connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can be a sibling, it can be
It's not always intimate.
absolutely
Yeah.
it can be a friend.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it doesn't even need to be long term, but when it's just that like you feel like you've known somebody before, there's almost always some kind of a connection to a planet in one person's chart and a node in the other, or some kind of a nodal connection in the chart. It's not often that's not the case.
Okay.
So in terms of, thinking about soulmates in astrology, I would say that's probably where that notion would fit.
Mm-hmm. Nodal, like nodal.
Nodal
D,
connections.
yeah, or T.
D. Nodal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how can people use astrology to predict, business ventures?
Absolutely. There's a whole branch of astrology that looks at business. And part of that is electional, so picking a good date to incorporate all that kind of stuff is quite common. But yeah, even just in picking a name for your business, in anything like that, in where you're located, because there's a whole branch called geolocality, astrolocality, and it's where they take, so say you take a business that's developed at a certain time, you look at that birth chart, because everything is birthed at some point, right? Whether it's a country, a business, a person, whatever. And so you take that company's chart, you can lay the planetary lines over the globe and see where it will thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of practical uses that way.
Oh, so
Wow.
You use it for business. You use it for, obviously, love and relationships. You said medicinal.
Medical, yeah, as a diagnostic tool in the right hands, it's quite phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
because each planet rules a part of the body, each sign rules a part of the body. And then, so in the 12 houses in your chart, the first house is your body, the 6th house is illness, and the 8th house is death. So you can sort of look at how those things are all playing together.
I have a question in terms of what ways have you seen astrology been misused? Like, have you ever seen something and you're like, no, that's not right, or no, that shouldn't be done that way or this way?
That's
like,
a good question.
Well, I mean, here's the shortfall of astrology is that it's plagued by bias.
Mm.
You know, you are, anytime you're using a human to interpret something,
there's always
there's a problem. You know, there's always going to be some kind of a bias.
Yep.
Yeah, and in terms of what I've seen, so before Trump got elected, there was a huge conference, and they did a panel of astrologers to predict the election, and they made all sorts of mistakes. Like nobody knows when Hillary was born, so they couldn't even decide which chart to use for her. Apparently her birth time is written down without an AM or a PM.
Whoa.
That changes things.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
changes
So
things.
it's like they couldn't even decide which chart to go by. And then everybody's bias against Trump was so high that they totally predicted it wrong.
Mm.
You know? So I think bias can create a lot of problems that way, you know? Edmonton has an Edmonton Astrological Society, which I am now the president of, but they've been around for like 44 years or something. And they love this electional stuff and this mundane astrology. That's the thing that they kind of cut their teeth on, the ladies that have been there since the beginning. And so we sat with the election charts for Canada and sat with Justin's and
Wow.
what's his name's. And we were 75%, we called a liberal minority. And the people who didn't, it was straight up. One lady said straight up, I don't want it to be liberals.
So
she predicted,
bias.
yeah. And then the other two really, really wanted liberal, and they predicted a liberal majority. And then somebody just went straight up, like, off book and wanted a conservative majority and just didn't even want to have a conversation. But anybody who really looked at the astrology of it, we all called a liberal minority.
That's crazy.
Wow.
You can really predict certain things by consulting the sky. See what I did there?
Yeah, very good. Well done. You're so
This
sleepy.
guy.
I'm clever. I'm clever. So it can be used in politics. It can be used in business, medicine, medical. What else we miss?
Said relationships.
Financial. Sports, gambling. You can predict outcomes of games.
You shouldn't have told me that.
Yeah, I know.
No, I'm joking. I'm not even. No, we kind of.
I bet on the
I
NBA
stopped.
finals and I
stopped.
came
recently.
up. Shout out Kawhi Leonard. Really came up on the Raptors. I should have worn my Raptors hat. But so you can use astrology to predict
Gambling.
There's a software for it, actually.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what it's called?
Write
Nope,
this down.
but I'll send it to you after.
I'm gonna need
Yeah.
that information.
So actually, if anybody just looks up Alfie Lavoie, he says Lavoie, but it's Lavoie. He was an engineer, and he has all sorts of software, and he's totally a researcher. So all of his software is research based, and so one of the things he has is a gaming and gambling software.
Because that's all that we're missing is a system to to make some
But even then, I mean, that's another area where bias can be a real problem,
True.
right?
It
It's
is
like
a
if
real
you really
problem,
want
you know.
somebody to win.
Imagine
you
investing in
see
a
it.
software. You're like, yeah, I got this now. Yeah, go to the casino. You're hyped. You
Yeah.
got your money in your pocket. You put it down. The system tells you to bet here. 10 minutes later, oh, you lost it all. Who's to blame in that sense? Like, who do you like? Would you
for buying
you-
the software and spending all your money.
Would
You made a
personally?
choice.
Would you personally trust it though? Like, would you trust a software like that?
I would.
You would?
Yeah, I would. Because when I look at what was happening astrologically when I won $10,000 at the casino, it was really obvious. But I couldn't have planned it if I tried.
Yeah,
Because you want it too bad.
Could you plan that for me?
I can't plan it. That configuration will not ever happen again while I'm alive. Because one of the planets was Uranus, and I'm not going to ever be 120.
Damn.
Well, I might. You never know. You never know. But
What about for an Aries with his my moon in
Cancer.
Cancer, my ascending in Scorpio?
Scorpio ascendant. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we predict a good time for me to head to the casino? Can we do that?
Do you even have a good gambling fifth house?
Let's find out.
That's yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Look at that. You love to gamble. You got Venus in the fifth house just like I do. Damn.
As a risk taker.
I had to stop myself from going to the casino.
Yeah, it's addictive. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, well, yeah. You would definitely want to do that a lot. You have a bit of an addictive personality, I'm gonna guess. Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that about you.
Oh man.
Yeah. Huh.
I'd like to know more.
Well, I'll let you know when Jupiter's going into Pisces. And that'll be good.
A good time to go gamble?
Not bad.
I haven't been to casino in
I'm
like
kind
a
of
year.
curious. When's my time to go gambling? Like.
I need to
Oh,
know
yeah, you
what's
need
your time.
Yeah, damn.
See? So much good information if you have your time.
Mom, I'm gonna call you right after this episode. I need that time.
So what else do you get from my chart? I see a lot of symbols. I see some circled parts. I see.
So that's, you've got Sun and Venus conjunct. So
Mhm.
they're like not 2 degrees, not even a whole degree apart. And my moon sits there. That's why I circled that. That's kind of neat.
Oh.
Yeah. And then, and that's an opposition. So whenever you've got a really strong opposition in your chart, you both have one. Those are areas that you're always going to be trying to find balance. And here's the secret to it. You're not actually ever going to find it. Because as long as one side of an opposition is satisfied, the other one's not. So you can compromise, because that's really what opposition's all about. But a compromise means nobody gets what they want. Right?
Yeah. Nobody gets everything that they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I see.
And so knowing that about yourself, that's one of the hardest things somebody ever told me, is that because of the opposition that I have, which is actually, I have that same Jupiter,
Mhm.
and it opposes my moon. So that's a signature on my chart. So I can speak to you from experience. That it was very devastating when somebody first said that to me. And then I thought, but then I can just stop trying to achieve that.
The balance.
Yeah.
The
To
balance is
satisfy
overrated.
whichever side needs to be
Balance is-
satisfied in that moment.
Balance is overrated when you're trying to achieve something great.
Yeah.
When you're trying to aspire to something more.
Yeah, and there's a time for everything.
Yeah.
Right? There's
That's
a time
facts.
for everything. So you facilitate the thing that needs to be facilitated in that time, and not worry about the other thing until it's time.
That sounds
Facts.
a lot like me.
Facts.
Like, to be honest. You know.
And for you, it's about you versus them. It's about when to worry about you and when to worry about making people happy.
Mhm.
And that's a hard balance.
It's a very tough balance.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Can't make everybody happy.
It's
No.
impossible.
You gotta
Okay.
make yourself happy.
You try to make everyone happy. Something's gonna give. You try to make someone else happy or everyone else happy, you probably end up being unhappy yourself. And I think vice versa. So,
But I'm going to guess you suffer from FOMO more than you do.
what's FOMO?
Fear of missing out.
Oh,
Do you have
Oh.
FOMO issues?
you have
Sometimes,
FOMO?
yeah.
You're one of those
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
You go to all your friends. You go to an event. You're like, hey, yo, what's popping out there? It's like, yeah,
I feel that.
Yeah.
I get it.
twerp.
You're just like, you're just where you are in the moment.
Honestly,
You're like, whatever.
I'm chill. Like
Whatever.
I'll catch up with my guys.
Because the
another
party's
day.
where you are. You don't care where everybody else is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I don't really have that issue. Like,
No. So again, that's Libra, and you don't have that strong Libra in your chart.
mm.
Yep. Whereas he does.
Tell us about ourselves in the opposite sex.
What do you want to know about yourselves in the opposite sex?
Everything.
What are our biggest issues when it comes to engaging
Oh,
with
that's
the
a
opposite sex?
loaded. Holy, that's a lot of loaded information.
This is
So
the meat and
yeah, we
potatoes.
love to do loaded.
I like my meat and I like my potatoes.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
So,
So, are you a
it's-
monogamous kind of guy?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
I'm waiting for that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Excellent.
Ah.
So the hardest part for you in a relationship is that what you want and what you're attracted to are not the same. It's hard. That's not fun.
Oh man, I love this episode.
Yo, this room's kind of hot right now. Right? Alright, so what I want and what I'm attracted to are not the same thing. Can you elaborate on that? Like, because I'm going to be honest with you, you're completely right. You're 100% right. Like, wow.
I could have told you that.
Yeah, but you know him. I've met him like a half hour ago.
She said what I want and what I attract. Wow. Okay. Okay.
Just take a breath.
Let me just
Center yourself.
Holy smokes, yo.
This is hilarious.
I'd say I wouldn't tell anybody about doing a podcast.
Some of my friends are gonna be listening to this like, yeah, that's crazy. Wow.
Ooh-wee.
Okay.
Because so you have Venus in Gemini, which is really light and fluffy. So your moon's in Scorpio, so you want this really deep connection.
Yeah.
But you attract bimbos, probably. light and fluffy. You attract light and fluffy.
Uh-huh.
And that's fun for 5 minutes, but then you get bored.
100%. I'm excited. It is what it is. Huh. Alright, okay. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
This is amazing.
This is
Whereas you don't have that trouble. Because you're attracted to people who are like you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
The problem for you is nobody's ever going to be your mom.
Ooh.
It's hard. That's what they have to live up to.
It's a pretty high standard.
That's what I'm saying.
Extremely hot.
Shout out Nina.
But that's the thing. Like that's you have something that you hold. You have a very concrete thing that you hold up that that is what you expect or hope or wish or whatever, or driven to have in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's so that sometimes is harder than having you don't know what the hell you want.
Yeah, but how do I start to know what I want? Like,
You
know what I mean?
This is gonna be the most trite thing I can say, but it'll come with age.
It'll come with age?
Yeah, it'll come with experience.
Experience, maturity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm a mature individual, but there's times
Well,
where
you
it's like...
you have a very you have some really to be honest, if I was to look at the charts and not have the dates and not know anything, I would think that you're older than you. Because you have a bit more youthful stuff going on in your chart, and that's just based on moon phase. We didn't even talk about moon phase yet, because then you have what's happening, the relationship between the sun and the moon, and how does that impact your personality. So quite generally, if you have a waxing moon phase, so the moon is moving away from the sun, there's just a more youthful energy to that. There's a more optimistic energy to that. If you're in a waning phase, you're in a full moon phase, then there's more of a realism, maybe even a bit of cynicism. And I would say definitely cynicism with the Scorpio moon, for sure. But yeah, there's definitely, you have lower expectations of the human race than you do.
I think that's sounds about right. So
I mean, I feel like we've all been let down. So I think for me, having no expectations, I don't put myself in that position to be let down again.
Because you protect yourself.
I kind of, it's
you
like
both
putting
have
up a
moons
wall.
that protect themselves.
Yeah.
Yours is more gentle and more optimistic, and yours is more like a steel safe of protection.
Because like the things I see, like we're both from the Toronto area.
Yeah.
The things I see in terms of like the dating realm of things, I'd say it's almost non-existent. And living in Edmonton now too, like comparing, contrasting the differences between Toronto is there's some differences, but altogether, like just in our generation, there's not much, I'd say, for me personally, hope in dating altogether. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I'm being honest. Like our generation altogether, I feel like dating, relationships is so temporary.
Well, so interesting, back to Pluto. Pluto in Sag is all about freedom. There is a sense of non-committalness
Mm.
with the Pluto and Sag generation, and a whole redefining of gender roles. Like we see that really glaringly, right? Where it's
With
like,
millennials, right?
yeah, with that age group. So I think it's probably 24 and under is all born with the Pluto and Sag. Yeah.
Mm.
What does our chart say about our, creative or entrepreneurial ventures?
Well, you have Leo, and so when we look at career in general, status, life goals, you have Leo up there.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be seen. You want an audience. You want
That's why we're doing this.
to be the top of your game. And you also don't really want to be told. You don't have a chart, you don't like to be told what to do at all.
That is facts.
So you better figure out how to work for yourself because it's kind of the best choice for you.
That's kind of what we.
Yeah.
Kind of what we're.
I tell this guy to set up a camera, he'll just read my message and not respond. I'm like, damn, bro, okay, alright, shit.
So yeah, you're definitely set up for entrepreneurship because you have the drive to do it, to make sure it happens, for sure. Yeah. So.
And what about what can that tell us about our chemistry?
Yeah.
Like.
Get the gab.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, to be ruled by the same planet is very helpful because it just means that you're going to compete with each other in a way that moves you forward,
Healthy
Mm.
competition.
as opposed to
Healthy
being
competition, yeah.
a block,
Yeah.
right? And so that's really good. You have very compatible, you have the same sun sign, both of your moons are in water. In terms of how you see the world, it's compatible. Do I see any trouble? Nah.
I'm sure you might run into some conflict, but like you said,
Well, I
always
mean,
progresses us.
we don't really stick around with people who don't create a bit of conflict for us. If we're people who are interested in evolving at all, then we tend to bring people into our lives that will challenge us in positive ways,
Yeah,
right?
No one wants to be surrounded by a bunch of people that say yes to everything.
Well, there are some
Well, so,
orange
yeah,
Americans
true.
who enjoy that very much.
I
But
know a couple.
I'm not gonna mention any names, but no, there you know what? There are some signatures in a chart that would actually like that
Mm.
because they don't really want to be challenged or told,
Yeah.
they're wrong or they're different, whatever the problem is. But Mars is all about challenge, right? So you want people who challenge you because you want somebody to stimulate the Mars. Mars on a bad day really wants you to piss them off. It's like, please give me your best, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Alice will say some dumb shit. I'm like, bro, come on, man. We hit you with some facts right now, brother.
There are days where I want someone to just. I wish a nigga would.
Try me.
We say that type of stuff on the
I
podcast.
can't.
You can.
You guys can. I can't.
But yeah, no.
The center of the Oreo is not allowed to say.
Oh, man. It makes the cookie, though. It makes the cookie.
It's true.
Definitely. Shoot, this stuff is like, I've learned so much.
It's eye-opening, yeah.
It's very eye-opening.
I thought previous to this episode of Astrology, you would just, okay, you have a sign, you're born on this day, this month, that's how your traits are going to be. That's it.
No. And even I was thinking on the way over here, even just like with this chart, you think that that's all, but it's not. Like, if I had a similar chart and I have similar things in my chart, I have my experiences. I don't have your experience from Toronto, being a young man of color. But we're not. Okay, Mississauga.
That was funny.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our life experiences are going to be completely different. The social issues are completely different. They're there where we're not without social issues. But yeah, we're just going to come from totally different experiences.
So those also define who we are, how we view the world
100%.
altogether.
And how these things manifest, right?
Yeah.
So that's why, say you're coming in for a consultation, the first 15 minutes is a conversation because I need to know what life experiences have driven this story and in what direction has it gone, right? Because each placement can manifest in so many different ways. I can't guess that. I need to know from you, how has that played out?
So let me just propose a scenario right now. We have an individual. We're creating someone.
Okay.
We're creating them from scratch. How much importance is their background compared to their horoscope make in forming that individual? Like, what's the weight in that altogether?
See, you can't even do that because that's really going to depend on what's in the chart. So
Okay.
somebody who has, say, so the signs all fall under 4 modalities. So you've got, or elements. There's 4 elements, 3 modalities. I got it. So if they're fixed, there's 4 signs that are fixed, there's 4 that are cardinal, and there's 4 that are mutable, okay? So the reason I say this is that if you have a really fixed chart, those things manifest more obviously,
Okay.
are harder to change.
More rigorous. Okay.
Yeah, fixed, that you think of it that way. And if they're in their own sign, they're going to actually, like if the planet is in its own sign, it's going to be a bit purer in the way it plays out.
I see.
Okay? Whereas you can have somebody like me who has nothing in my chart that is in its own sign, call it either dignified or debilitated. And so anything could happen. Right? And so in that case, then background would definitely play a way bigger part in that equation. Like let's say 50-50 if I have to put a number on it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a more dignified chart or a more fixed chart or a more, there's some things where it's like your experiences are definitely going to shape who you become,
But
the scenarios are going to be a bit more predictable.
I see.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just listening and learning.
It's
I'm
all
soaking
dependent,
all
yeah,
this
that's
in. I'm soaking all this in.
I want to go back to the relationship part. Just touch up on it real quick before we leave. What are our good sides? What are our strengths to dating and relationships, friendships, all of that?
Give us our weaknesses too while you're here.
I already know my weaknesses. You already told us our weaknesses, but
Well, what are your personal strengths?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so you're extremely passionate and with the right person devoted.
Ladies, you hear that?
And so anybody who you let in will have a very strong connection. And your facility in a relationship is actually to help somebody emotionally transform, which is quite a heavy thing.
So I'm trying to help someone else.
Yeah, just by being you,
yeah,
not
yeah.
like you're actually working
Yeah,
out
not changing
that.
myself.
No,
Yeah, for sure.
No.
For sure. Okay.
No.
Interesting.
So, and you also have an interesting connection to women too. Like you, there is a part of you that really you're attracted to powerful women. There's a part of you that is. When
Oprah,
you
what's up?
Yeah.
No Oprah?
When you get there.
Not really
When you
not
get
really
over
Oprah, man.
Venus. When you get over that Venus and Gemini. Yeah.
That's,
Might as well do me too.
yeah.
Your strength. Well, you're so sweet. Cancer moon is just so sweet.
I don't know if that's the word I'd use, but
You also really dig powerful women.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
for sure. In a different way. But yeah. And you're an optimist. So you're just easy to be around, easy to hang out with. Yeah. You're on a bad day, you're a great guy to have around.
Oh,
And then on a good day, you're an even better guy to have around.
look at the astrologers complimenting me and stuff.
There you go. You asked for it, I gave it.
this guy's blushing.
Right?
Turning purple.
Oh man. Well, to say again, we really appreciate you coming in,
I appreciate
spending
it
some of
too.
your time here. I could say this has probably been one of the most insightful episodes we had
Oh,
thus
yeah,
far.
100%.
So, do you have any last words or questions, comments?
So you guys, Tracy, Consult the Sky. You guys can reach her at Tracy at consultthesky.com. Consultthesky.com is also the website.
Yep.
Right? Book a consult, man.
You can also follow, I have a blog that comes out faithfully on the new moon and the full moon. Anything else in between is depending on how busy I am. Or I also write the horoscopes for the Llewellyn Astrological Calendar, which is, if you're trying to learn astrology, it's a great tool because it actually, the last 5 pages of the calendar is breaking down things that we talked about, like the aspects, the signs, moon phases, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's really cool. And then it actually says on every day, if you have your trusty legend that I gave you, it actually has every day what the aspects are that day. So it's pretty cool.
Book your appointments. know yourself, or whatever Drake said. So, yeah.
I have one more question.
Okay.
That's your question.
I forgot to ask this before. Why is there some things that have 13 horoscopes? 13 signs?
Okay, so in the constellations, in the beginning, we only were moving through the 12 of the 13 constellations. And as everything has shifted, the orbit of, and I don't remember exactly how it works, if it's just the Milky Way or what. But we now traverse through the 13th sign. And so astronomers like to say that astrology is bullshit because we don't use, it's not physically accurate of the sky, and it's not wrong. This is an interpreted language that is based on, to say that the signs are 30 degrees evenly is wrong. The constellations are actually quite varying in size. And so this is a symbolic language, and that's actually astronomy that they're talking about. And then there's, people need to be different or oppositional or know-it-all. And so then they come up with these things to throw the rest of us off. So, yeah.
So how can we, how would our, our audience get a hold of you, get a contact of you if they want a consultation?
So you can just go straight to www.consultthesky.com. And there's places all over the website where you can just book your own appointment, put in all your own information. Or you can follow me on Facebook, which is also Consult the Sky, Twitter, also Consult the Sky, Instagram, Consult the Sky.
Do you have any events that you're going to be present at, anywhere people can, catch you, see you,
Well, I have an astrology class starting tomorrow night. Anybody's interested in that. Beginner astrology. And that's also on the website under classes. I don't have any speaking events coming up locally, but we do have our regular Edmonton Astrological Society meetings on the second Friday of every month, and our elections are this Friday. And that is astrology.com. Astrology Edmonton. Astrologyedmonton.com.
And you're the president.
I am. I know it sounds really it's not fancy at all, but I did just plan a conference, which was new and fun.
And where's this conference?
That was just here in Edmonton. Yeah, we did our Canadian Astrological Conference here.
Did you use any astrology in planning this conference?
No. I did not. That's actually one of the first things I said when I welcomed everybody was, if you look at the chart of this conference, I want you to know I did not pick it.
Not liable for what happens here. Oh, man.
This has been very, very...
Very intriguing, interesting, and I've learned a lot personally. I know Alex has as well, too. This guy sat back for like 5 minutes, just be like,
soaking everything in.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Everything, so. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, thank you so much for having me, though. This was actually really fun.
Any questions? Any other questions you wanted to? I know you got hella questions.
Awesome. Well,
so just so everybody knows, this is scratching the tiny surface of astrology. This is like a grain of sand in the vast beach that is astrology.
You guys heard that from the president herself. We valid,
certified,
stamped.
Oh, God, you guys.
100%. So,
thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you again.
This has been great.
My pleasure.
If you guys, our listeners, had any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach us at giftedgappod@gmail.com.
Or just DM us.
Or just DM us. Hit us in, goes down in the DMs. You can hit us up there too. IG, Twitter, Get the Gap, all that good stuff. So
make sure you guys subscribe.
Yeah.
Follow us. Just like that.
Just like that.
We're going.
Yo.